والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Inshallah, we're going to start the talk, but what I would like to do to sort of get us engaged in the discussion, one of the themes that's going to come up today is the word believer. So I would like for the sisters in the back and the brothers in the front to pair off and to take a couple of minutes to discuss the following question. So the question is, what is a believer? What is a believer? So Abdulaziz, you can talk about it with Ustad, Vern, you and Dahoud, and then the sisters in the back, inshallah, y'all can pair off and just have a short conversation about that question. What's your name, brother? Ibrahim, can you come up closer, please? And can you sit with those brothers right there? So we're going to talk about the word believer. So what is a believer? So let's take about 3 or 4 minutes. And Ayana, can you partner with the sister there, please? Okay. And inshallah, so we will start now. The title of the talk is The Value of Giving Your Time to Service.
Don't show any action. You would know they believe us. Yeah. What do you think about the believers? How about somebody that's outside the context? It's not. What that's definition.
That's I don't know.
Also, Christian. Jew. Not necessarily.
Okay, so inshallah we're going to take some feedback now. We can start with the sisters because it sounded like a few of you had some aha moments back there. There's a lot of energy back there, so we'll start in the back in any order that you choose.
Oh, I think I just got pointed too. So Sister Khadijah and I came up with a believer is someone who fundamentally believes in Allah, believes in His messengers, the Day of Judgment, destiny or qadar, and the books. But we went on to say that because of this belief in Allah, a believer gets up every day and strives to obey Allah, strives to be better, tries to put their faith and trust in Allah because he believes in the books, because he believes in destiny, because he believes in the Day of Judgment.
All right, very good, very good. Okay. Anyone else?
So
So Mujiba and I said essentially the same thing about believing in Allah and the Messenger, but we also said that belief is used to make decisions about life and to make decisions about behaviors.
Very good. Okay. Okay, Sister Fatira.
Yes, and Sister
Sabria.
Sabria
Mm-hmm.
came up with a good point that we also have to bring beliefs of believing in the prophet before.
Could you raise your voice, please?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Believing in Allah and believing in the prophet, but also means that we should be good neighbors and look out for each other and want what we want for our brothers, that we look out for them, call them, speak to them, and find out that they're all right.
Very good. Very good. This is all good stuff. Good stuff. Let's hear from the brothers. What's up, Vernon?
Well, you've heard a lot of the same things. You believe in either Altar of Islam or the Prophet or the books, right? And also to put those things that you understand into action.
Okay.
You know, by being a better citizen throughout.
Okay.
You know, your local community and being active in different things that you see some of the ills that society has, to see in your little small way how you can maybe help alleviate some of those issues.
Okay. All right. I'm liking this. Abdulaziz and Ustad. Wa alaikum salam.
The word believer connotes to me that it's when you put away or make your worldly attractions second nature because you want a better outcome. That your utterances to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have to be activated in your daily life.
Okay. So it sounds to me like we can just call it a wrap. We don't need to have a lecture, right? Because we're real good with this, right? But I think, so one of the things I wanted to do today was to connect today's talk to the very excellent talk that we got last week. And all of the talks, in my opinion, have been very, very good in terms of the substance. And but last week's talk was about charity. And Brother Qais, soon to be Imam Qais, was mindful to help us understand that there is a difference between the usage of the term zakat and then the usage of the term sadaqah, but that the common thread between the two words is this notion of giving, right? And so I wanted to expound on that idea of giving and connect it to what I have heard emerge from your mouths as a profile that fits someone that's called a believer. So I think that would be a question. Is it safe to say that the believer has a profile? So the believer has a certain description. Is it safe to say that? Yes, no? Yeah, okay. All right, so we agree on that. So I want to look at this idea in the light of the following verse from the Quran. If you have your Quran with you, or if it's on your phone, it's Surah 49, which is Hujurat, verse 15. So in the Arabic, the verse says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله أولئك هم الصادقون. Again, إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله أولئك هم الصادقون. So verse 15 from Surah 49 says, by way of the English translation, the believers are only the ones who have believed in Allah and His Messenger, and then doubt not, but strive with their properties and their lives in the cause of Allah, it is those who are the truthful. It is those who are the truthful. And so there are a few points here that I would like us to look at today, and the connection between the act of giving and what I would like to call for the believer the spirit of giving. So there's an act of giving, which Brother Qais spoke very articulately to last week, is when we reach in our pocket and we take out our money that we earned, because he emphasized that a lot, our money that we earned, and we give it to someone, fi sabilillah, according to the dictates of the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he cited the verse last week that very clearly states, Allah says that amongst their wealth is an allotted portion. Who are these people that amongst their wealth is an allotted portion? The believers, right? Amongst their wealth is an allotted portion. Who is it for? It's for those who are in need. So all of this refers to the act of giving. But to expand on the concept of giving and connect it to the profile of the believer, I chose this verse that we're going to look at today. Okay, so the first thing that I want to do is go back to the definition. So I asked you a question, what is a believer? And all of you rightfully answered the question in a way that spoke to your understanding of what the Islamic theological definition of belief is. Because there is a proper theological definition. And the proper theological definition suggests that belief is a combination of two things: saying and doing. Right? So one cannot say, I believe in Allah, and not do anything that would support that. Right? So even when we say we believe in Allah, the last day, the angels, the day of, the prophets, the books, all of these, what we call the articles of faith or the articles of belief, that is not enough to qualify a person to be called a believer. Now there's a reason why I chose this verse. And the reason why I chose this verse is that if you were to read back, and this is, I mentioned verse 15, if you were to read from, I believe, beginning verse 14, the Prophet ﷺ, just to give you some back history to this verse, one time a group of people came to the mosque and they engaged the Prophet in a discussion, ﷺ, and included in this discussion was an assertion that they made to the Prophet ﷺ. That assertion was what? They went to the Prophet and they said, we are believers. And if you were to read the verses in sequence, you would probably glean the understanding that they said this with a sense of, holding this over his head. Like they were doing him a favor. What do you want from us? We're believers. We believe already. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ was instructed to respond by saying, no, in fact, you have yet to believe. قُلْ لَمْ تُؤْمِنُوا. So he was instructed to tell them emphatically, no, you're not believers yet. Instead, you are only ones who have submitted to Allah. And the Prophet clearly was instructed to demarcate or to identify them as Muslim, which would suggest that there's a distinction between Muslim and Mu'min, or one who is a Muslim and one who is a believer, right? And then that verse was followed up with the verse that we are looking at today, in which Allah Ta'ala gives us a working definition of what it means to call oneself a believer. So Allah starts out saying, the believers are only the ones. Why this language, are only the ones? Because in the Arabic, Allah says, innamal mu'minun. And this word, for those of you who are in the Arabic class, I don't know if you've come across this inna form yet. Fatima, I know you have. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Right? But inna and ma, when those two things are combined, they make up something called hasl. And hasl is specificity. That hasl means specifically Allah's identifying, He's giving you a definition. Right? So He started out saying, no, you're not believers. That would suggest that, okay, well, what is a believer? If we're not believers and we said La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, then what is a believer? So Allah is explaining what a believer is. So He starts out saying, the believers are only the ones who have believed in Allah and His Messenger. So this could be argued to be the first characteristic of a believer, is what? That they in fact believe. That they accept. They accept what? They accept that Allah is their Lord and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was His messenger. And whenever we talk about this, when I say we, I mean here in the masjid and when we teach the idea of Iman, I'm careful to remind people that Iman requires that we take an initial leap of faith. And we start with a first general assumption, because Iman in of itself is not a rational exercise alone. So being a believer is part rational, it could be said, and also part irrational. The irrational part is related to what? Our acceptance of things that we can't see. We accept Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can't see Him. We believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we long for a meeting with him, but we haven't seen him. We believe in the last day. That requires a leap of faith, what we call a leap of faith. That requires a surrender of our intellect to this place of acceptance. And this is what is meant by the assumption. So we start out with the assumption that Allah is God. We don't have any questions about that. And anyone who has a question about whether or not there is a God, before they can become a believer, they need to sort that out. But the believers who are in the company of other believers, we all accept this, that Allah is God. So the believers accept this. They believe in Allah and they believe in His Messenger. And they believe what Allah says the responsibility of the messenger is. So they accept all of those things. And even if we discuss things, we may debate things, we may interpret things differently, we do not argue about the essential truth of those two things, Allah and His messenger. Right? Then He said, and then they doubt not. So this suggests that the believer doesn't just accept, but that they have acceptance that is rooted in what? Firm conviction. Because firm conviction equals no doubt. So they have firm conviction about what? God's existence. They have no doubt about that. And because they have no doubt about that, the believer has no doubt about something like the idea that this life is not all there is. And that the work that they do is for something more than this life. They have no doubt about that. They don't need to discuss it. They don't need to argue about it. They don't need to harangue over it. They don't need to debate people over it. They have submitted to that, and they believe that, and they hold it with a firm conviction. Now, how does the believer get to a place of firm conviction? So that's a question. How does a believer get to a place of firm conviction? Is it something that you simply study and you come to a place of firm conviction? Or not? So let's take another couple of minutes and let's talk about that. Because Allah said that the believer, we're looking at the profile now. So the first thing is what you all said. They believe in Allah, they believe in the messenger. Then Allah said, and then they doubt not. So let's take a couple of minutes. And Fatima, you can join when we have some new people in the room. So let's pair off and let's take a couple of minutes to discuss how do we come to a place of firm conviction. And then we'll have some feedback. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. Yeah. Do you know what conviction means, Pastor? You do? You sure? You sure? Go over the Bible. If you're not sure, then go back.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, so the question, I want to repeat the question one more time. How do we come to a place of firm conviction as it relates to our belief? So when we say we believe, and then Allah says the believer has no doubt, how do we imagine getting to that kind of place?
But that's basically what it is.
So how do you get to a point where you believe with all questions Allah is for us?
It's like the knowledge comes after that. You know, it's this central practice.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna get some feedback now because I like the energy in the room. So the question is not meant to be. We don't want to get too philosophical, right? Because we just want to look at this idea of not having any doubt, right? And does it actually mean that you never have any doubt? Or does it mean something else? And I'm hoping that what will emerge from some of your answers is something that leans towards the latter. So we'll start this time in the front with the brothers, so Vern and Dawood, or Ibrahim, Yusuf or Ibrahim? Ibrahim. So let's get some feedback from you guys first. So how does one come to this place of firm conviction?
Well, you know, like we discussed, like, you know, first, you know, You hear something you want to be a part of, you hear this. And then you have to do some study, at least investigation, some subtle part on your own to get a better understanding of what you believe. Because one of the things about blind faith, and no blind faith, you gotta have some kind of explanation to explain what you're getting into.
Right.
You know? And that was pretty much the gist of what we're talking about, is that, you know, once you accept this, now find out more about it. You know, investigate. You know?
So a part of how you come to a place of firm conviction is through the acquisition of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Right, because I agree, and I hope everybody in this room agrees. Blind faith is a no-no. We don't want blind faith, right? Because blind faith has a negative connotation, right? Okay, so one of the ways that we come to this place of firm conviction is acquiring knowledge. Abdulaziz?
We discussed
Speak up a little bit.
to retain that firm conviction, no matter what you go through, at the end of the day, you return back to that conviction. You don't lose that conviction. Depending on the severity of your test, that you return back stronger.
So, okay. So are you saying that the firm conviction is certainty? So as long as you have the certainty, even if you have doubt, you still have conviction. That makes sense. Okay. All right, sisters, let's hear from you guys in the back. In any order, it doesn't matter. Some of y'all are smiling, so you may as well talk.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
To me, after when you say you have no doubt, for anybody from the medical field, I look at my body, like you said, Mr. Aunt and past year I read about Professor Walaka, and no other proof is found, which is it. My body is it. The function of the body lets you know that there's somebody higher than you somewhere, someplace, somehow.
Right.
Because of the way that it's functioning. So if you just take a look at your body one time and think about the body, and you know it's somebody.
Right.
So you have no doubt.
Right. Okay, that's very good. That's very good. Okay, anybody else?
So I think if you just are pay close attention to the experiences that you have in life, and if you're observant of your life and the situations that you're in and how that stuff works out, then you come to firm belief. And even though this is kind of a little bit off of the philosophical edge, but if you can surrender your heart to where you are, then you can come to firm belief and apply it your heart.
Okay, so this is all good stuff, right? Because, okay, Ayana and Fatima, did y'all have anything? Amal?
Yes. So you say that the Amal did most of the talking at the beginning? And then
She did?
Yes.
Well, then let her talk then.
Yes.
She doesn't talk.
Well,
Okay,
we
that's
wrote down
all.
what she
We
said.
wrote down what she
You wrote down what she said, okay.
Yeah. So Amal said, read the Quran, Salat, make lots and lots of dua, and fast outside of the month of Ramadan. Fatima went on to add off of what Amal said, that engaging in more self-reflection, turning to Allah when you have doubts, and when you come across something that causes doubt. I said, recognizing that Allah knows that we will doubt, not beating ourselves up when we do doubt, and recognizing moments of doubt, and trying to recognize where they come from.
Right. Okay, so now this is good stuff. The main reason being that we must recognize that we are human beings. And when we recognize this, when we read what Allah says, we must read it with the understanding that Allah knows our nature. So He knows that even though he says the believers will have no doubt, now the believers have no doubt, or they have firm conviction, it doesn't mean that you'll never have doubt. Because the doubt that it's referring to is not related to our individual experiences and situations. The doubt that he's referring to is that they have no doubt about the foundation of their belief, which is what we said was what? Allah and His Messenger. So they have no doubt about that. And so that has to be distinguished from the doubt that will arise invariably. We go through situations. Allah tests us in a variety of ways. And this is why the other part and the answer emerged from you all. Because those of you that said that your knowledge must be, the conviction comes from two things. Your belief in Allah, which is rooted in knowledge, and not just blind faith, blind acceptance, but rooted in knowledge. And then your lived experience. And the repetition of your lived experience. It was suggested that if you pay attention to your life, you will observe a rhythm. You will observe a particular way that your life goes, particularly as a believer, right? You'll observe it. And in the course of that observation, you will come to a place where you understand, as Sister Sabria said, even when you go to the doctor, and the doctor gives you his educated guess about your condition, you will have no doubt that the one that has the intimate, complete knowledge of your condition fully is not the doctor, but the maker of the doctor, you and the doctor. And about that, you have no doubt. Although, in the course of your experience, and depending on what you're dealing with, you may doubt a lot of things, like, is the doctor any good? Do I like the doctor? Do I want to take the medicine? Is the medicine going to work? Am I going to get better? What's going to be my quality of life? You know, can I go back to work? All of these are things that you wrangle through, and you will have bouts with what we call doubt. But you will not lose your faith. And so the word that Allah used in the verse is ثُمَّ لَمْ يَرْتَابُوا. That word yartabu is a verb that comes from the word rayb. Now, those of you that have been studying your Quran, and during Ramadan you've been reading your 30th, when you read Juz 1, Baqarah, right? Verse number 2 says what? ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ. There's that word rayba. When you read the translation said, this is the book about which? No doubt. What type of doubt is rayb? Because there are various words for the word doubt in Arabic. One of the most commonly used words is shakka, right? So shakka means to doubt about the essential truth of something, right? So shakka is someone tells you something and you say, I doubt that. And you satisfy your curiosity about the truth of what the person is saying or not through some type of academic exercise. You go do some research or whatnot. Rayb, on the other hand, is when you doubt the essential truth of something and you reject it for something else. So when Allah talks about the believers in Baqarah, He says about the Quran, this book about which there is no doubt, meaning that you can't doubt the essential truth of the Quran and go to something else and then call yourself a believer. And in this verse, Allah says the believers will not do that. So they will not, because of the bad experience, now doubt the essential truth of Allah and what He sent by way of His messenger and go looking for something else, because that is not what we do. So that's what is meant by the firm conviction. And the way that you come to that place, I would suggest, is through paying attention to your life and your experiences and connecting all of the things that you go through, good or bad, to Allah. And that's how you come to this place where even if you're going through something bad, Brother Dawood, it doesn't mean you're desensitized to what's going on with you. It doesn't mean that you don't have any sense. When you're going through a bad situation, you're telling people it's going to be all right. It doesn't mean that our elders, you remember our elders, our grandmothers and stuff will be bad, right? And they would say what? They would encourage us, right? You'll live another day. They would say these things that we might have thought younger, like, what do you mean? This, I'm going through it right now, right? Let the Lord take care of it. Or anything like that, that sounds like a dismissive, just let the Lord,
you off, yeah.
Right. When in fact, it is the essence of what it means to have faith. That you hold on in spite of. Because you're holding on to what? The firm conviction. I know Allah is there. I know Allah got me. I know Allah is going to take care of me. Not I think. Not maybe. Not Allah is going to take care of me if I... No. That you have that firm conviction. So Allah made that clear to those people who asserted to the Prophet that they were believers. He made that clear to them. Okay? Then, so this is the second part of the believer's profile. So they believe in Allah and His messenger. They have conviction in their belief. They don't just say it. They don't just say it. They don't just say it. They have conviction. And then the third thing, Allah said, and they strive with their properties and their lives in the cause of Allah. So Brother Qais spoke to striving with your property when he taught us about giving zakah and giving sadaqah. And I want to add to that the spirit of giving. How do we become charity givers and maybe not give a person a penny, but we give them a part of our spirit, right? So the third thing is the believer lives or attempts to live values-based action. Values-based action. And Allah specified two areas. They give their wealth and their time, their person. So we talked about the wealth. Now let's take a minute to talk about how can you be a giver of yourself, because the topic is the value of giving your time in service. So we have to place a value on our time as it relates to the service that we perform. And understand that that is a form of sadaqah. The Prophet ﷺ referred to the time that you spend as a volunteer, or even as a paid volunteer, in the context of giving to someone else, to, as Sister Sabria said, to alleviate their pain, to look out for the other person, to care about the other person, to have a genuine concern about what's going on with your fellow human being. Vernon, you mentioned being involved in the larger society or the smaller community. Our presence is a form of sadaqah. And when we show up with that spirit, that is a service that we render to one another, fi sabilillah. Right? And that is the profile of the believer, the person that shows up and gives of not just their wealth. Because giving of the wealth, the scholars argue, is the easiest thing to do. Once you get past, the accounting that we all do. Can I afford to give this? What did we say last week? Islam has a place for those who have a lot and choose to give a little, and it has a place for those who have a lot and choose to give a lot. So some of us may have a lot, or we perceive ourselves having a lot, and we give a lot. So every time the call to give it goes up, we're giving $10. Some of us have a lot, and we choose to give a little. So the call goes out, I don't give 10, I give $1. But you're still giving, so you're still good. But then we said, but Islam does not have a place for those who have a lot and choose to give nothing. Because our faith is expressed through giving. So we're not giving, we're not living our faith. I repeat that. If we're not giving, we're not living our faith. So we have to understand this idea of giving. Because oftentimes we reduce it to the dollars and cents that come out of our wallets or our purses. And of course that has a value. And of course it's a good thing. And of course we should do that. However, when we understand the idea of sadaqah, it helps to shape how we choose to carry ourselves as believers, how we treat each other and we treat other people, right? So I give the $1, this is an exercise. I go in my pocket, I give it, alhamdulillah, I've fulfilled the obligation of giving. But when I give of my spirit, I cultivate a charitable spirit, well then, now I'm engaging sadaqah on a higher level. So now when I come, I am now an agent of help, an agent of assistance. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke about sadaqah in these words. One time he was asked, Ya Rasulullah, what can I give if I don't have anything to give? And one of the answers that he gave to the person in that context, he said, "Tu'inu sani'an aw tasna'a li akhrak." What this means, he said, if you have a skill and someone's building something, you can help them build it. Or if you have a skill and someone lacks that skill and they need help them do it. So these are two cases where he didn't say give money, go find money and then bring it back and give it. No, he said, well then give of your time. Give of your time. Give of your intellect. Give of your skill. Right? So this suggests that the idea of charity is broader, because it includes our agency through these acts of kindness that may manifest through our volunteering, our time. Okay? And so, going back to the verse to wrap up, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, those people who give, they strive. And this is the other thing. So the word that's used for striving, Allah says, وَجَاهَدُوا. وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ. So the word jahadu, random Arabic test, sounds like what word? Jihad. And we know, we just uttered the word jihad, so the room is bugged. So somewhere some algorithm is going crazy. Like we're showing up. I'm serious, right? Because that's how it is today, right? But the word jihad is connected to the word jihad. And the connotation for jihad is always reduced to this notion of senseless violence. When in fact, jihad speaks more to a sense of agency and activism and involvement and engagement. And Allah used the word jahadu. Jahadu is a form of, from the word jihad, which means that you strive. So what is the striving? The striving is the day-to-day stuff that we all struggle to be consistent with. The day-to-day stuff, right? The little things, because the little things matter, right? But if we take that as a mantle, that we want to perfect that, right? We want that to be as a part of our profile, believer profile, then we will see much success. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves when we're consistent, right? So وَجَاهَدُوا بِأَمْوَالِهِمْ, and Allah mentioned their wealth, and then He said وَأَنفُسِهِمْ, and then with their lives. The assumption oftentimes is made that when we strive with our lives and it's jihad, that we are killing ourselves, right? Because every time we fight jihad, we're dying, right? No. The mujahada here, or jahada here, is this consistent way of striving to do something charitable. So you're giving and you're doing something charitable. Jahadu bi anfusihim. Right? So this is why that maxim holds true. Belief is not what we say. Belief is what we do. So believers don't talk, they do. Right? This is the exclamation point. Allah says, Ulaika humus sadiqun. It is those who are the truthful. So this was an emphatic answer to the claim that those people who came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, "O Muhammad, we're already believers." And Allah told them very clearly, He outlined this profile. No, the believers are these people, and then those people are the truthful ones. And anyone who doesn't fit that profile, and the three things that we mentioned, again, belief in Allah and His Messenger, conviction in their belief, and values-based action. Those three areas, then we won't say that they're a liar, we'll just say that they have work to do. Right? Now, just to wrap up, the Prophet ﷺ, I mentioned that he spoke about charity in a broader context than just giving our money. And another hadith, which I think is very good for us to remember and to know, it's in the collection of Imam Muslim. He said that the Prophet ﷺ said that the deeds of my ummah were revealed to me, both the good as well as the bad. And I noticed that amongst the most blessed acts is the removal of harm from the path of people. That is one of the most blessed acts. What does that sound like? Something that we can do. What? What is it? The removal of harm from people's path. Not litter. Be more conscious of the environment. Beautification of the environment. The Prophet ﷺ said one of the most blessed acts, not salah, not zakah, not hajj, he said the removal of harm from the path of people. That is an act of sadaqah. And then he said, and I noticed that amongst the most reprehensible acts was phlegm in the mosque that was not buried. One of the most reprehensible acts was phlegm in the mosque that was not buried. So a mindfulness of our environment, cleanliness, right? Cleaning the environment, not littering, not destroying the environment, right? All of these, the Prophet ﷺ told us indirectly are acts of sadaqah if we engage mindfully in keeping our environment clean. You know, and in the larger society, if we're a part of environmental efforts to protect the environment. I mean, this is how we can connect these things so that we can live these values that we're talking about in this lecture today. And so this would suggest that the idea of sadaqah is reflected most broadly in acts that are of beneficial service to all people. And so to give sadaqah doesn't mean that you have to be rich. This is a takeaway. Because sometimes people think that in order, you know, when I was a lot younger, lot younger, right? One of the things I used to say was, man, when I get $1 million, I'm gonna give so much sadaqah, right? And like sometimes we might say this kind of stuff, right? That I'm gonna give sadaqah when I get X, Y, Z. And that's one way of looking at sadaqah. The monetary aspect of giving sadaqah. But how can I be a more charitable person starting today? Right? So one of the takeaways is that we look at sadaqah through this broader lens. How we carry what we give of ourselves now becomes sadaqah. And when we give it fi sabilillah, this is a caveat. If I give of myself, my time, fi sabilillah, I have to give my best effort, not my weakest effort. So this calls for us to challenge a notion, right? The notion that when we give something, it's human nature to expect something in return. What am I getting out of this? What am I getting back? But when we give something fi sabilillah, what is the transaction? What's on the opposite end? What are we getting back? We're getting back whatever Allah promised that we would give back. So when we give of ourselves, we should be mindful that we are engaging from that place, and our intentions are very important. Right? And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I encourage myself first and then all of us this evening, that we think about ways that we can become agents of giving. Right? That we give more than we take. Because that's really what a believer is. A believer gives more than they take. Takers take more than they give. And there's a profile for a taker, because they're always angling for what's in it for them, so that they can get something. But the believer is more on the opposite side. They give more than they take. And Allah's overarching promise stands true. What is that promise? That whenever we give, Allah will give us in return. We never lose. That proposition will stand to the day of judgment. We never lose when we give. Even when we think we're losing, we never lose. Okay? And so, inshallah, may Allah bless us and help us to cultivate the spirit wherever we are, and that we cultivate it in our homes, in our families, in our masjids, in our communities. And I ask Allah Ta'ala to accept our fast of Ramadan and to continue to bless us in every possible way. Do we have any questions? Or have we exhausted this topic in a way that you have some food for thought?
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a little thought here.
Yes, sir.
Listen to this lecture about like spending frivolously
Frivolously, yes.
and overextending yourself to the point where you can't give as much sadaqah or zakat to the community, and you spend on this $1,000, let's just say for the sake of argument, a ring or whatever it is, and you could have spent $300 on a ring, and you know you're actually taking away from the community. And so, is that a part of that?
No.
No.
No. The reason I'm saying no is because If we think back to, were you here last week for the lecture?
No.
Okay, so Brother Kleist covered that pretty extensively.
Yeah.
And a part of it is we have to begin to look at the meanings of things, right? So spending frivolously, right, is equal to wasting.
Right.
And we should not be people who waste things, right? That's different than someone spending $1,000 and they can afford to spend $1,000 on something that they want for themselves because they have the right to do that. But if that person who has that ability is not giving anything,
Right.
they have a problem spiritually, right? And if that person, if a person is spending $1,000, but they can't afford to spend $1,000, and they should be spending $300 or $200, but they're spending $1,000 for whatever reason, they need to think about that because they have a problem economically, financially, and spiritually. You understand?
Yeah.
Okay, so because we want to get away from, it's not wrong to enjoy your life and enjoy nice things, nor is it haram for you to spend your money on the things that you like, that bring you joy. But spiritually, you're not in a good place if that's all you do. If all you do is consume things. That would be our argument about consumerism. That's why consumerism is a problem, because it engages you in this activity of spending mindlessly. You just spend on the next thing, right? But when you start to think, well, why am I spending on this thing right now? Do I need it? So it came up in the discussion if we think about our lives. So we can get to that place where we start to really think about our lives. When you think about your spending, you will start with, what am I spending in the sake of the Lord? That will be, so when you look at your finances, if you do your home budget, you're going to have a line item, sadaqah. And what am I spending? Fi sabilillah, because I got a job, I got money, I have a nice car, I have a nice house, I have all this stuff. What am I spending fi sabilillah? And why do you think about that? You think about that because, going back to the firm conviction, you believe in the last day. What does that mean? That means that you know you have to go back and answer for some stuff. Like, why did you spend all your money on all that stuff and you didn't?
Give up to the community.
Or to those who are in need. Because if you don't have a need, and Allah is the one that satisfied that, and that was the other thing that came up in the Qais talked about the money. He challenged the notion that the money is ours. Because the reality of it is the money is provision, it's rizq. It's what Allah gave you. Yeah, you went out and you earned it, but it's rizq, right? It's your provision. So did you spend it responsibly? Engaging in frivolous spending and consumerism without thought is not spending it wisely or responsibly.
Is that similar to what we talked about earlier? Like, you have a lot, give a little?
No, those were just like profiles. So he was just saying, and Flesh, you want to?
Sure. What I was saying last week in terms of people being able to give was more along the lines of, sometimes we come into the masjid space and yes, we're encouraged to give. We're encouraged to give a lot, right? We're encouraged to give a lot. But then sometimes people who have money, and let's say I have $100 and I choose to give $5 or $10 out of that $100. Sometimes there's sort of like this giving shaming that because you don't give more than the $10, that you're somehow or the other not a true Muslim. But Islam has a space for the person who has $10 and who has $100 and chooses to give 10, right? $100 and chooses to give 5. Islam has a space for that because their reward for that is still with Allah. And Islam also has a space for the person who has $100 and chooses to give the entire $100. And if we think back to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, you have the ones who gave half of their wealth You have the ones who gave all of their wealth, you have the ones who give most of their wealth, right? But what Islam doesn't have a place for is for the one who has and says, you know what, I'm not giving anything because all of this is mine. So that is that's the context.
Yeah.
of it.
Okay, so does that help, Brother Doe?
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm glad we're having this discussion, this follow-up, because in addition to what he's saying, the community should have this space. That's a part of the diversity of the community, because everybody's on a different level. And the last thing that we should be doing, because it pollutes the spirit of charity, is shaming people who can't give the way that we can give, because it's not an exhibition. In fact, what happens when we do that? If I can give 200 and you can give $2, does that make me better than you?
No.
Does that make me better than you? If I can give $200 and Sister Khadija can only give $2, does that make me better than her? No. Why? Because that $2 is like the $200 to Allah, because it's me giving. The monetary value of it is what we look at. People created that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't look at how much you gave. He looks at whether or not you gave. Okay? So that's also very important. This is because this shaming, this idea of shaming, I've witnessed it. I've been in communities that are very, very affluent. And, you know, I've been a part of fundraising, and people are writing checks for $10,000. And I take my check, and my check for $100, and I just ball it up slowly, and I start to creep my way back out the door, because it can get pretty intense. You never want that, right? So a part of encouraging the giving is that everything that the believer gives is valuable and valued. Okay? Go ahead.
Is that, in the spiritual aspect of giving,
Yes, sir.
would it be considered best to conceal that, let that be between you and Allah?
Not always. But you can. It's a good thing to do that. It's a good thing, for example, if you think that if it's known, people will make it more about you and what you gave than the giving itself. And it really depends on the situation. But it's not wrong to give openly. You know?
Is it better than spiritual?
Again, it depends. Because better is relative to you. What's better for
What's
you,
better? Okay.
right? You know, because if you're giving a lot and it's a boost to your ego, you may want to conceal that, right? Because it's really not about your ego feeling good. It's about you giving because you want to give a lot. You understand?
I understand that, but somewhere I read that like the barrack is better if you keep, that aspect between you and Allah.
It could be, but we don't know because that's what Allah does. But I'm saying that because how do we know? Qais mentioned that Abu Bakr in the lecture last week. Abu Bakr is documented that there was a time when there was giving, right? And three other companions. Uthman gave a third of everything that he owned. The Prophet called out for help one time in the masjid. Uthman gave a third of all his wealth. And he was a wealthy man. But he gave a third. Umar gave half of all his wealth. And he was okay. But he wasn't wealthy, but he was all right. He gave half of it, right? Ali gave secretly, right? And Abu Bakr gave, according to this account, everything that he owned at the time. How do we know about this? Because they said what they were going to give. You see, so it's no harm in saying, I'm giving this, or it being a known fact, right? But I think the concealing is for you. Because whether you give it and announce it or conceal it, Allah knows about it. But if it's spiritually better for you to conceal it, then you conceal it.
So, can I give one example? Like
Sure.
sometimes, when people are doing fundraising, and you make a call out to raise funds, no one raises their hand, right? Until that first person says, you know what, I'll give something. And then suddenly, a whole lot of people start raising. So in a case like that, you're actually starting something that is good, right? You're actually starting a good trend because other people are now following your pattern of giving. So that's just something that's coming to my mind in terms of, it really is contextual, as Sheikh is saying, it really is contextual.
And I know like one of the tactics that some of the wealthy people that I know, right, they never give big publicly. But there's a reason for that, right? What's the reason?
So people like that.
There you go. Because if that's the guy that gave 100,000, right? I remember that guy. Well, everybody's gonna line up to see him with their little project, right? Once the affair's over. So there you go. So it depends. So Sharif, you had your hand up?
No, I think in the Quran it also mentions like giving openly as well as in secretly in it.
Yeah.
In the same ayah.
Yes, it does. Yes, there's a verse that mentions giving openly and secretly in the same space. So really, I think it boils down to the context.
No, I was going to make the same point that Brother Dice made, that can't you, if your intention is to inspire other people, encourage other people, then it would be better for you to do it openly. If that's what your intention is that you are trying to increase what's given.
Yeah.
That's what.
Okay.
You know, I was also thinking something similar because sometimes you might want to make a stance against something. So you're giving because, hey, I'm funding this project, and you're kind of making a public stance to inform people to make sure, like, hey, you know what? These people were, I don't know, arrested illegally, and I'm donating to this cause. But if I don't tell anyone, then people may not be aware of the cause itself,
Right.
Or that I'm behind it, or something like that.
There you go. Right. So I think the point is, so there's certainly virtue in concealing, but there can be virtue in announcing as well, right? And it really boils down to context. Anyone else? Anything else? So the bidding. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question about the removing harm. Does it have to be can that be not so literal like a physical barrier, but like if you do something, just protection also? Or was that more literal?
No, it not literal in any type of specific harm, but obstruction. It could be interpreted in a proactive sense, where like building new roads, building things, opening up ways for people, removing barriers. I mean, I think that it's open to a broad interpretation because the Prophet, peace be upon him, did not specify a thing. He just said that removal of harm from the path of people, you know, and that could be a variety of things. It really can be. I think that it you know, in the type of world that we live in today, and the plethora of activities and things that are going on around us, I think there's no shortage, right? And I think that we should feel inspired to get involved as much as we can. Because for us, we're getting the ajr of giving sadaqah whenever we're engaging. So we're not just out there because it's the right thing to do. Our higher purpose is that this is an act of worship for us as well. That's why I said the part about your intention, you know? And I think that, you know, for those of us that are involved in doing work in the larger community, as long as we keep in mind that it's like what you said, Vernon, about the little bit that you do goes a long way, right? Because for us, our involvement is to plant those seeds of goodness. because that's the best, sometimes that's the best that we can do, right? But we have to be engaged in that process of planting the seeds of goodness. Why? Because we know that the sense of justice or absolute restoration or resolution is not ever going to be here, right? The sense of absolute justice, absolute resolution is never going to be here, right? Is that true or not?
True.
Is it true?
Absolute justice.
Absolute resolution, absolute justice, absolute. Is that going to be here?
Yeah, my lifetime.
Why isn't it going to be here?
Maybe not in our lifetime, but it will be.
It will be here? In this dunya?
When Isa gets here.
I said, not in our lifetime. Not in our lifetime.
Okay,
And the book that I
So-
read about Islam, the law is going to change things.
right. But so then the question becomes, is it going to change it here or is not?
I ain't gonna see it.
That's a question that we can walk away with. We can do some homework.
Pondering.
Because it should inform, right? We should think about that. Because is it going to change here or not?
Well, I'm thinking about the return of Israel to the land. where-
Ah, okay, so now-
So it's-
Right. But now remember, the coming of Isa is also an announcement of the coming of what? The last day. So the funny thing about that is stuff will get fixed. Most of us won't be here, then everything's over. And nobody's here, nobody's around to enjoy it, right? So I think that what I'm speaking to more is the notion of absolute justice, absolute resolution. These are fallacies in thinking about this realm of existence. Because this realm of existence is not the realm of existence of absoluteness and perfection. Jannah is. Jannah is where you go, you have no problems, everything's right, everything's great, nobody's mad, nobody's this, nobody's that. So as long as we're engaging in this imperfect reality, we should not expect perfect results. And that will inform our work, and it will help us to maintain a healthier outlook, so to speak. So, somebody else had their hand up in the back? No, yes, no. Vice, you had your hand? No?
That's it.
Okay. All right, so, Qasim? Nothing? Aldi? Qadi? Nothing? Really? Got work to do, man. You guys supposed to be telling us what the deal is. Did anything that we said today make sense? You can tell the truth. Amal, did anything that we said today make sense? Or is she hiding? Did anything make sense?
Yes.
It did? Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Okay. So we'll close out. Subhanallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.
That was.